Hello, welcome to another segment of Recovery TV. Today we're going to talk about 5 common myths surrounding this notion of infidelity. So stay with me. Hello, I appreciate you all tuning in for another segment of Recovery TV, where today we're going to talk about these 5 common myths surrounding this notion of what we call infidelity. But before we begin, I just want to remind you all to please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click that bell so that you're notified when more quality videos such as this one are posted. And also don't forget to check out our website, because we do an amazing affair recovery couples weekend, and I've included a link to that page on our website in the description below. So let's begin. Let's talk about these 5 common myths surrounding this notion of infidelity. The first common myth is that infidelity only happens in bad marriages or relationships. This is simply not true, and I have a lot of couples that come in for therapy that are more or less shell-shocked because they really identified their relationship as a good relationship or an improving relationship, and so they're really taken aback that this type of thing happened to them. And so the reality is that we are all capable of cheating. We are all capable of being in those circumstances. And given the right circumstances and the wrong frame of mind, the storm of infidelity can brew fairly quickly without much warning. And so the more that we become self-aware and understand that we're all capable of doing this, and it does happen in good relationships, not so good relationships, and as well as toxic relationships, the more protected we will be and the better protection we'll provide for our relationships. So remember, yes, infidelity can happen in good relationships as well. The second common myth is that marriages or relationships can't survive the impact of infidelity. Again, this is simply not true. Now, I have a lot of couples coming in that have experienced that impact, that are really struggling with this notion, but they're at least entertaining the idea that it might be false. I really am disheartened by couples that immediately throw in the towel because they've bought in to this teaching that marriages simply can't survive it. It's just not true. I've worked with many couples that have not only been able to survive this phenomenon and get the right kind of healing, but they've been able to thrive as well. So remember that yes, marriages can and do survive and thrive even after the impact of infidelity. The third common myth surrounding this notion of infidelity is fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So a lot of spouses and partners that are on the receiving end of infidelity, the wounded spouses we call them, are coming in feeling very foolish and weak for choosing to fight or stay in the relationship. And they're hearing a lot of messages from friends and family, often telling them to get out while you can. You need to leave. Why are you staying? This idea of fighting for something that they care about now has become an act of foolishness in their minds. And what I tell those couples and those spouses in particular is that this concept of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, simply does not apply in relationships. Intimacy cannot be risk-free. By definition, intimacy has to have risk involved. For those of us in committed relationships, part of that risk is putting ourselves in a situation day in and day out to be fooled. It's called trust, and it's called vulnerability, and it's what makes relationships worth it when they are going well. And so my message to you, the wounded spouse that is really struggling with this idea, is that if you want to fight for your marriage or your relationship, then by all means, you fight for it for as long as you have fight left in you. I don't care how many times you've experienced infidelity from this particular person. If you want to fight for it, then fight for it. But I do encourage you to seek out the right kind of help so that you increase the chances of getting the healing and recovery that your relationship needs to survive and thrive. The fourth myth surrounding this notion of infidelity is once a cheater, always a cheater. Now, we've all heard this expression from time to time, but again, it's simply not true. Granted, there are a lot of people that have committed multiple acts of infidelity, but this does not have to be their legacy. I've worked with many people who have committed single acts of infidelity, and I've worked with people that we would consider a chronic adulterer or maybe even a sex addict. And those people have changed their lives, and they've changed the narrative of their story and not let this single event or series of events define them. Now, if you're the wounded spouse, of course you're struggling with this notion because the lines of trust and safety have been severed in the relationship. So aside from those that have been directly impacted by the trauma of infidelity, I think we as a people should do a better job of giving others the benefit of the doubt in these situations and not allowing ourselves to define them by a single act or a series of behaviors that they got caught up in. The fifth and final myth surrounding this concept of infidelity is that emotional affairs and online relationships are not considered cheating. So I think the reason why people struggle with this concept is because with a physical affair, when someone is physically acting out with somebody else that is not their spouse, it's pretty clear cut. It's pretty cut and dried. We would all say, yes, that is cheating. But what is an emotional affair and what is an online relationship? What does that look like? What constitutes that? There's so much ambiguity involved that sometimes people will convince themselves that this is not cheating. So what I encourage you to do if you're finding yourself in this situation is focus on one thing in particular, the feeling of betrayal. So in a relationship, if our spouse starts to feel uncomfortable with our interactions with any given person, then we need to pay attention to that because we could be teetering on the lines or the boundaries of the relationship. And if we end up crossing those lines, usually the feeling that emerges is betrayal, and that is a wounded feeling that is stemming from a deep wound. And so if you're feeling that feeling of betrayal or your spouse is feeling betrayed by you, you definitely want to pay attention to that. And I would encourage you to go ahead and seek professional help, to let a counselor or therapist help you eliminate some of that ambiguity and make sense out of the situation. One thing I tell couples in these types of situations is that ambiguity is not your friend. We need to eliminate as much of that as possible. So remember that yes, an emotional interaction, an emotional affair can be and is often considered cheating, and online relationships can be and is often considered cheating as well. Thank you once again for tuning in. I hope this segment on the 5 myths surrounding this concept of infidelity provided you with useful and helpful information. If you are needing direction in finding a therapist in your area to help you with this issue or other things you might be dealing with, I've included a link in the description section of this video below to help you out. I've also included some links of some good reads on this concept of infidelity that you also might find beneficial. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you back here again next time.